What's up, guys, and welcome back to Beyond the Void Horror Podcast. My name is Alex, and today we're going to be doing another spoiler review, a discussion, so spoilers ahoy, for episode 3 of Creepshow season 3. Let's get into it. So just to be clear, this is a spoiler discussion. If you haven't seen the show, I would highly recommend that you watch it. I typically try to do, things that you might not know about in the episode and do a little bit more of a deeper dive on some things. This particular episode didn't really have all that much. So there's only really a few things that I'm going to go over here and probably just give my opinions and talk about the episode in general. So moving forward, this episode was with 2 segments, which is the Last Tsuburaya and Okay, I'll Bite. Both of these segments kind of made up for last week's episode, but not by a whole lot. It just was a little bit more interesting. The first segment that we saw today was the Last Tsuburaya, who I thought was going to be all about the special effects guy who did the Godzilla and Ultraman and everything. Turns out it was just another usage of the surname by a guy named Ichido. So it was a completely different thing. Just wanted to point that out. But the Last Tsuburaya was actually written by 2 people, Paul Dini, who has worked on Lost, Batman the Animated Series. He came up with Harley Quinn and more. You also have Stephen Langford, who has worked on TV shows like Family Matters, What's Happening Now, Malcolm and Eddie, and more. And we get Jeffrey F. January, who I hadn't heard of before, who's actually mostly known for being a second unit director, although he has shot a lot of episodes of The Walking Dead. So he's done like 4 of those and a couple of the Creepshow across the entire 3 seasons. So what did I think of this segment? Well, the first segment I actually was really into right off the bat. There was a couple of scenes and things that they did in the movie that I'll talk about that I really liked. But for the most part, I felt like it was like the acting was much better. It felt like these people were really hitting their stride when it came to acting and kind of get me interested in this story about this painting, which is never been seen before by some horror painter by the name of Ichido Tsuburaya, who was this sort of Meiji era Japanese like horror painter. It did a lot of contemporary paintings of like yokai, which is also known as demons. There are very different types of yokai, by the way, from extremely bad to fun and friendly, by the way, if you've never followed yokai stuff. But this guy's depictions and artwork were so profound to most people that they looked away in disgust, and this particular painter, Ichido, decided that he wanted to make people upset about the things that he saw, and he got some sort of enjoyment out of it, some sort of sick, hateful enjoyment because of his hate for humanity, which we find out later. There's a boy who has shown up to this office with a lawyer and a lady from a museum, and she's explaining all of this stuff, and he's like, whoa, this is pretty gross stuff, like, what am I here for? And they're like, well, you're the Last Tsuburaya, so this painting has been handed down to you and only to be opened 100 years from now to the last descendant, if any. And he's like, wait, I worked at Best Buy in Fullerton and now I'm here and sitting on a gold pot? And that's when Wade comes walking in the door, who is the tech guy, Wade Cruz, who has a ton of money and just likes to blow it on things, offers the kid $20 million, but after talking for a while, you realize that the kid's got too many questions, so he drops the price down to 10. The kid's like, I'll take it. Tsuburaya was actually known for doing these Tsuburaya was actually known for doing these demons or yokai, but he was also known for doing like flowers and scenery, which, as pretty as they are not very expensive or wanted by the fandom of Tsuburaya. The museum lady, of course, wants to win it, and every time Wade Cruz comes around, he steals it from the museum because they can't offer a lot. But he's offering this kid $10 million. That night, Wade, and of course the museum lady is invited because fuck you, she's invited to the event to see this unraveling of this whole thing. In fact, they have a whole group of people that are having this party and drinking, and they're going to be talking about, burns the fucking thing as he opens it up after looking at it for about 10 seconds. And everybody's like, what the fuck? I mean, even I was like, what the fuck is going on here? He's just so rich that he doesn't give a fuck about anybody else seeing it. He wants to be the only one that's ever seen it, and he paid $10 million to do it because he doesn't have anywhere else to spend his money. Reminds reminds me of Squid Game in some ways. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. Wade's girlfriend's even like upset about this too. She's like, what the fuck are you doing? Wow, you're just destroying art. Great. What a wonderful person you are. And he doesn't even care. He like relishes the idea that he did this to fuck everybody else over. I'd be like, fuck your party. I'm never coming to it again. Don't ever invite me. And then they'd be like, well, there's $7,000 champagne. I'll be right over. I don't really drink champagne, but I'm sure you can coax me over with a little bit of money. I'll drink the shit out of your stuff and just say F you to your face. You sort of see edges of the painting. You don't really get to see the full painting until the very end. You kind of see little parts like an eye or like the leg or something like that. Wade tells this story to his girlfriend. It's basically a woman who paints like $100,000 paintings, and he bought her to make paintings for him only, and they somehow got into some relationship, which is very odd. But Wade tells this story about this vase that he wanted to buy for $300,000 to this guy when it was worth a lot more, but the guy wanted to sell it so that he could get some sort of surgery done for his daughter because she was dying. And he refused to buy it and said, I changed my mind. And he said the look on that guy's face that he had just killed his daughter was worth more than the money I would have paid. And she's like, wow, you're a fucking monster. Which, yeah, I mean, that's pretty messed up, right? Anyway, he goes back to the guy, offers him $100,000. The guy snags it up because he's afraid he's going to lose everything. And so with $100,000, at least he could try to help her. But, you know, he's defeated and he's used this person and just manipulated. And she's even like, so what happened to the girl, to the daughter? And he's like, oh, I don't know. I don't really care. Like, that's just how cold Wade is. Money has made him that terrible. Suddenly, Wade starts seeing the faces of this demon that he had seen and burned up in all of the artwork around his house. He's a collector, so he's got a lot. Statues, wall paintings, everything are not off limits with this face. There was this really cool scene where he goes into the bathroom and you see all these hands come out and grab the mirror all the way around this circular mirror. And I thought that was really cool. I was like, oh man, I hope they do more of that. But they didn't. You do see him in the bedroom or something like that. He was like in the bed or something and he thought it was his girlfriend talking to him. And she tells the story of Tsuburaya and how he relished in the thought of people being disgusted by his artwork and that he loved pissing off people because it was so disgusting to them socially back at that time. The Meiji era was actually where the emperor was ruling from like 1868 to 1912. So you can imagine that, you know, seeing these graphic images might have really upset them if it still upsets us today. He tries to explain to his girlfriend that he saw this version of her but turned into a demon, and she doesn't believe him and gets mad and says she's going to leave. And he's like, well, I won't pay for everything. And she's like, whatever, I'll find another place to sleep. I don't care. That's when the demon starts to attach to him a lot more right here. And it's, of course, trying to attack him any second that he can. So he's kind of fucked himself over in so many different ways by pushing everybody out of the picture. Because of his selfish attitude, it's made it worse for him. But he's like, fuck it, I'm gonna fight this goddamn thing. You know, he tries to go to the lawyer that was in the beginning of the segment, and they kick him out with the security, and he goes back home. He's like, I'll kill it with a sword or something like that. And so he goes home, and he's got art pieces all over the place with swords and, you know, spears and all kinds of shit. He even shoots the goddamn fucking demon. But that's when it started to get kind of a little too hokey for me. It just felt like a dude in a suit kind of thing, you know? Like, it wasn't like shot in a way that was like creeping around corners or anything like that. It's just like, booga, booga, booga. And I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just a particular taste that somebody wanted. I mean, he is coming after him at this point in time, but still, I feel like they could have done it a little bit more tastefully, stylistically. It just wasn't my personal favorite thing here. But Wade does get the upper hand in some way. You're relieved, even though he's a shitbag and probably deserves to die. But he stabs the demon through the stomach, and it sticks through the, like, really thick glass in his eye rise. And he looks and he's like, I'm going to take you to the taxidermist tomorrow. And then it changes to Ichido Tsuburaya instantly. And what had happened is that Ichido was actually turned into the demon because of his hatred towards humanity. And it was sort of a punishment that kept him in limbo between heaven and hell or wherever he goes, and turned him into the worst, most disgusting demon he ever drew. And he's like, and now it's your turn. Thank you for freeing me. I'm out. Which Wade is like, fuck, again, nothing I do is right. So it doesn't matter how much money you have in the world. Some things you can't just buy your way out of. sometimes you just have to be a good person, I guess. So Wade starts changing and his hands change and he's like, fuck this. And he just runs at the spear and impales his chest on the spear, which I gotta say, you know, kudos, buddy. I don't know if I could have done that. And he did it without even thinking. He was just like, well, let's go. Of course, afterwards, you see like a silhouette of blood that from the lightning or something of the demon, almost like it's still around, even though he died. And maybe he will still be the demon. I don't know. I guess don't buy art and shit on it. Don't burn it. I don't know. Really just kind of about losing yourself to money, probably. But I mean, I liked it other than the very end of it. Like, it kind of got a little wonky. I still enjoyed it more than I did the last episode or last few segments or whatever. This one was like a 6 out of 10 for me, this segment in particular. So I really kind of enjoyed this segment, but it does kind of falter a little bit towards the end, but it is a step up from some of the earlier ones we've seen this season so far. I enjoyed it. It wasn't anything mind-blowing or anything like that, but 6.5 seems about right for the segment. The next segment, okay, I'll bite, is about, of course, this prison inmate who is in prison for killing his mother, essentially having a mercy kill on her because she was in so much pain. And he has a bunch of spiders in his cell that he basically takes care of. And I thought this was actually a pretty decent story because I actually kind of cared about the character a little bit, which is, you know, it does a good job of kind of like getting you in the, you know, feels a little bit for this guy, even though you don't really know if he's really that good or not. Kind of blurs the line morally there a little bit, but you can tell that he's just not made for prison. And he gets picked on quite a bit in there while he's in there. But this particular segment was actually directed by John Harrison, who has been a part of the Dune miniseries from 2000, the Frank Herbert's Dune from 2000. He also did Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, and he also did some episodes of the actual Tales from the Dark Side, and many, many other things. He wrote this story, and he did the screenplay as well. So, and this all takes place in a federal prison, by the way, with this character named Elmer. Elmer is the guy who killed his mom and everything. You very early on, you see him feeding something in the middle of the wall, like he's cut out this brick-sized hole so that he can feed this large, glowing-eyed spider, essentially, to be his friend in prison while everybody beats the shit out of him. He's up for parole. They bring up that he's been an ideal inmate in the prison system and that he would be let go if it weren't for the fact that one of the other prisoners died or something or got sick because he changed his medicine since he has access to the pharmacy or something like that, and they gave the prisoner some wrong medication. He was like, I never did that. I never did it. And it turns out it was the security guard being a dick because they got some sort of business deal with opium in the prison, and he gets it, I'm assuming, from these spiders he collects, because I don't know exactly where the fuck he's making opium in there. And he didn't really have like scientific tools in there, but the guards were letting him cook it. The one guard was letting him cook it up and then distribute amongst the other inmates. And he's like, I like him calm and chill. I don't like an itchy, you know, inmate. So you're making me nervous by not getting these done. So they lied and made up this story about this Polish John or whatever his name was. It was like to keep him in prison because he's the only one that can make this stuff. But again, I really think they're getting it from the venom that he uses from these spiders that he collects in the wall. There's like multiple different types of spiders too. So it's kind of odd. I don't know where he's in prison. I tried to look it up. There is another guard though that is kind to him after he gets kind of picked on about this stuff. Like he goes back to his cell. The bad guard's like a dick to him, throws him in his cell while two other of the guard's lackeys or other inmates had obviously torn the shit out of his place. And he's worried about only his spiders, obviously. And then the other guard comes in. He's like, hey, I'm not blind. You know, what's going on? And that's when you get to hear a little bit about Elmer's like history in his life and how he didn't really have that many friends and that he became friends with spiders instead. And so he's just you know, one of those kind of guys. And they even have a flashback at some point where he falls asleep at his desk of him killing his mother as a mercy kill because she's in so much pain. And he just doesn't want to see that, you know, her body's given up on her. He wants her light to be free, so to speak. But the good guard is kind of like looking out for him, and he tells him all the different names of the spiders. He doesn't point out the one that's in the wall because that's a special spider that he hasn't had a name for yet. That night, he's reading through his Egyptian stuff. He got a letter that from some lady because he's obviously very intelligent and he knows a lot about spiders and he knows a lot about like, you know, Egyptian myth and, you know, history. He's like reading in some book about it, which seems like he's trying to come up with some sort of like ritual in order to get out of prison or something because he keeps alluding to that. Hey, just wait. And it's almost time, here and there, all over the place. Of course, goes and feeds every one of his spiders, including the one on the wall, which he gives a grub worm to all of the spiders I guess he got from the recess pit in the inmate area. Recess. Oh, that sounds weird. Anyway, so he gives all of them a grub worm, except he gives one cockroach to the big one. And he's like, there you go. And it runs into the little brick hole. And then it starts to try to run out. And he's like, oh no. And you see the spider use its little leg and press on it and pull it back. And then he's like, oh, that's it. And he's flipping through his book, looking for different names or Egyptian gods, just like he named all his other spiders of Egyptian gods and things. And each one of them meant something different. He was like, that's it. I'm going to call you Sekhmet, mistress of dread, she who no one can escape. In other words, the big spider in the wall. But he falls asleep. That's when he has a dream about his mom. And then he wakes up to the inmates, the two that were picking on him before. One of them comes in and starts trying to kill his spiders. He does kill one. He steps on it and it freaks him out. And then he goes for a second one and it jumps out and bites him on the fucking eye. Like, that's one thing that I have a tough time with is, I mean, I don't like insects, but anything with the eyes trips me the fuck out. It wasn't that gross or anything. It just, I don't know. It's kind of gross. Now, I did do a little research on who Sekhmet was, and apparently she was considered to be the daughter of Ra, the sun god. She essentially was like Ra's Eye of Ra, the power in which he got from the Eye of Ra. It was like she was in charge of that, and she was like the vengeful Eye of Ra, essentially being the right-hand woman of Ra. And her name literally translates to the one who is mighty or powerful. But she had a ton of names. Apparently the god of healing. She was also depicted as a lioness in this picture here that you see. And she protected all the pharaohs and everything like that. Even after death, like even when she died, people considered her to be a protector of people. He mentions mistress of dread, but she was also known as Lady of Slaughter and she who mauls. But anyway, two inmates come in, they get bit on the eye, which I was like, ew, what the fuck? The guards show up, and of course they blame Elmer because why not? They can get away with it. The next day, the warden's like, we're going to spray this block and everybody's going to go get taken care of. And that, of course, freaks out Elmer because that means all his friends are going to die. They, of course, got knocked over and crawled into the wall to be with the big spider. And that night, he pulls out his book, puts a bunch of designs on the ground, and lays flat on his back, talking about consuming his soul. Oh, great majestic, come to me and consume my soul. And like all the little spiders are like coming out, and then the big one comes out, and you just hear crunch. And that night, one of the dickhead guards comes in talking about how he's gonna get a blowjob from this dude, which is like, yikes. But all he finds in the prison cell is his clothes laying exactly where he was laying, including his shoes, which are laying, you know, kind of silly or comically on the ground where he was too. Like there's nothing of him left and he just disappeared. Like some magic shit. And he's like, what the fuck? And then all of a sudden he gets his arm pulled up, his other arm pulled up until he's Jesus style being pulled up by the spider. And then he sees it. And he's like, oh God, no. You know, it's like the next day and all the warden and everybody are there and they see him in a cobweb, like in the corner of the prison with no idea where Elmer went. And the spider that you get to see when it comes out, it shows like a woman's head, like almost like some sort of, you know, like Sekhmet. So it's like abdomen. It's like big old butt that just has a head. And somehow I guess Elmer's in there. I don't really know. He sacrificed himself essentially to give birth to her to wreak havoc. So I don't know. That one was a kind of a cool story. I wasn't exactly blown away by it. I wish we could have seen a little bit more of the spider. It's better than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be one of those giant spider things, which we already had that pesticide, that funny one with the dude from The Walking Dead in it from season 2. So I was like, we don't really need another giant spider, but that one was pretty creepy. And anything with an eye is pretty gross. So, I mean, I give it points for that. I'd probably give that one like a 6, maybe a 5.5. So this was a little bit better than last week's episode for me. But this season really hasn't shown the goods just yet, and I'm hoping they're saving their best for the last 3 because I would like to see more of these, but I do understand people's gripes with it not being the quality and level that it could be, even though the comic books were that way, so I kind of understand, and I would like to see it stick around for a little bit more because I do enjoy them, even if they're not the most well thought out, you know, versions of short stories that you can find. So, but hopefully they get better. Oh, and before we go, let's talk about what comic comic we see for next week and what we're going to be talking about. We got Stranger Sings and Meter Reader, which are going to be next week, which are, it looks like there's some exorcist thing going on here with the guy. I don't know what is in his hand. It almost kind of reminds me of like Doctor Who or something like that. And then we got like the Siren and the Devil. And I think that's one from each of the things. So maybe a meter reader is going to be out on Halloween night and some kid is going to mess with her or him. And then obviously there's some sort of mix between an exorcist and a siren, maybe? I don't know. Seems interesting. Hopefully this one's the best. What do you guys think? It's enjoyable. It's not something I would like be actively seeking, but if I wanted to sit down and watch some episodes, might be fun to watch these. I wouldn't say that they're like super crazy good, but they're just above average for me. But I still enjoy them. So I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you think about this series? Are you still sticking with it? And if you are, kudos to you. Hopefully you can continue to join me on these discussions. I wish I could have found some more, like Easter eggs and shit. Them's the breaks. So stick around. We got more reviews and things coming up. We'll definitely be back for episode 4 of Creepshow next week sometime. These ones take a little bit longer normally than my other reviews, so it takes a little while to get them done. But thanks for coming by, and as always, long live the boys.